My friends, when the world tells you that a giant cannot be moved, remember the river that carves the mountain, not with might, but with persistence, patience, and purpose. Today, the question before us is not whether America's billion-dollar empire is powerful. It surely is. But whether India has the strength, vision, and determination to rise above it. The answer, burning like fire in the hearts of millions, is yes. The strength of India lies not in the treasure of gold or the weight of weapons, but in the minds of its people. When the world looks upon the American empire, it often sees towering skyscrapers, billion-dollar corporations, and unmatched military might. But history teaches us that empires rise and fall, and true power is not measured in the shine of currency or the sound of cannons. True power is the ability to dream, to create, to innovate, and to leave behind something that shapes humanity for generations. This is where India carries a strength far greater than what dollars can purchase. For India's wealth lies in the boundless capacity of its people, especially the youth who represent a force larger than the armies of the world combined. In every corner of the nation, in villages and cities alike, young men and women are turning ideas into revolutions. They are not only consumers of technology, they are creators of it. They are not only followers of global trends, they are the ones who will shape them. Where others may depend on accumulated riches, India depends on accumulated knowledge, and that knowledge is an inexhaustible treasure. It is not stored in banks or guarded in vaults. It is carried in the minds of dreamers, innovators, scientists, entrepreneurs, and ordinary citizens who dare to believe in extraordinary futures. This treasure cannot be stolen, it cannot be devalued, and it cannot be lost with the crash of a market. When America built its empire, it leaned heavily on wealth, power, and influence bought with dollars. But in the 21st century, the battlefield has shifted. The wars of today and tomorrow are fought not with tanks and missiles, but with codes, algorithms, discoveries, and ideas. In that battlefield, India is not only prepared but destined to excel. With one of the largest pools of engineers, scientists, and thinkers, India is not simply playing catch-up. It is taking the lead in fields like space exploration, artificial intelligence, pharmaceuticals, and renewable energy. Every breakthrough by an Indian scientist, every invention by an Indian entrepreneur, every discovery by an Indian researcher chips away at the illusion that money alone commands the future. Knowledge is not bound by borders, nor is it chained by currency. It is a force that multiplies when shared, a flame that grows brighter when passed from one hand to another. India, with its emphasis on education, its reverence for wisdom, and its hunger to rise, is positioned to wield this flame like no other. While America may boast of billion-dollar companies, India is nurturing billion minds ready to transform industries, heal the planet, and rewrite the rules of progress. This is not a race of dollars against rupees, but of creativity against complacency, of innovation against stagnation, of vision against vanity. The Indian mind has already shown the world glimpses of its boundless power. From leading some of the most influential global corporations to sending missions to Mars at a fraction of the cost, from revolutionizing technology to developing life, saving medicines, India has demonstrated that brilliance can outshine wealth. What matters is not how much money an empire holds, but how much meaning a nation creates. And India's people are in the business of creating meaning, through knowledge, through science, through art, through culture, through every act of excellence that emerges from a billion hearts and minds working with purpose. This is why the future belongs to India, not because it owns the biggest vaults, but because it nurtures the brightest ideas. Not because it commands the most powerful weapons, but because it cultivates the most powerful minds. Not because it dominates through fear, but because it will inspire through innovation. The empire of America may be built on the foundation of dollars, but India's rise is built on the foundation of intellect, and that is a foundation no storm can shake. India carries within her veins the resilience of centuries. Empires have come and gone, rulers have risen and fallen, and yet, through every storm, every wound, every shadow of oppression, India has endured. This endurance is not the endurance of silence or submission. It is the endurance of transformation, of bending but never breaking, of absorbing the blow and turning it into strength. When the world looks at America's empire of dollars, it may see a force that seems unshakable, but the truth is that wealth is fragile. Markets tremble, currencies collapse, and economies fluctuate. But the spirit of a people who have survived centuries of trials and still stand tall is stronger than any vault of gold or tower of steel. India's resilience is not measured in GDP alone. It is measured in the unyielding spirit of 1 billion souls who rise each morning with hope despite hardships. For centuries, India faced invasions, colonial rule, and exploitation that sought to strip away her dignity and identity. Yet, from those ashes rose a spirit that refused to surrender. A nation that was once chained by foreign powers found the courage to break free, not through wealth or weapons, but through the sheer will of its people. That history of struggle is not a weakness. It is the foundation of a strength that cannot be bought. America may measure its greatness in dollars, but India measures hers in the depth of her survival, in the strength of her soul, and in the courage of her continuity. Resilience is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to rise despite it. India has faced economic challenges, political upheavals, and natural disasters, yet she continues to grow, adapt, and thrive. This ability to transform obstacles into opportunities is what gives her a power far greater than an empire built on money. An empire of dollars can crumble overnight when markets crash, but a civilization of resilience grows stronger with every challenge it faces. That is why India's rise cannot be stopped. It is fueled by a history that has taught her how to endure, to adapt, and to emerge stronger each time. When the world witnessed the pandemic, economies faltered, industries collapsed, and fear spread across nations. Yet India, despite its own struggles, became the pharmacy of the world, producing vaccines not just for itself, but for countless nations in need. This act of resilience showed the world that true power is not in the ability to hoard wealth, but in the strength to uplift others even in times of difficulty. America's empire may have resources, but India's resilience is a resource beyond measure. It is the invisible force that pushes her forward when the odds seem insurmountable. This resilience is also woven into the everyday lives of Indians. From farmers working tirelessly in their fields to entrepreneurs building businesses from nothing, from students burning the midnight oil with dreams in their hearts to workers who never give up despite hardship, India's strength is not abstract. It is living, breathing, and growing in every corner of the land. It is this collective resilience that forms the backbone of the nation, making it unshakable even when faced with adversity. The world often confuses power with wealth, forgetting that wealth without resilience is like a castle built on sand. But resilience turns every grain of sand into stone, every wound into wisdom, every setback into strength. India's journey proves that true power comes not from the size of one's empire, but from the size of one's endurance. That is why India will always stand ready to rise above, not by imitating the empire of America, but by standing firmly on the foundation of her unbreakable resilience. The world today is not led only by money, but by trust, relationships, and influence. For too long, power has been measured by the size of economies or the strength of armies, but the tides of history have shifted. Nations no longer rise solely because they hold the largest stockpile of wealth. They rise because others believe in their vision, because they offer hope instead of fear, and because they choose partnership over domination. India has steadily stepped into this role, becoming the voice of the voiceless, the bridge between the powerful and the powerless, and the guiding hand that seeks to bring fairness to a world often blinded by greed. America may wield an empire of dollars, but India wields something infinitely more enduring: the trust of nations who see her not as a master, but as a friend. Trust is not won overnight. It is built through years of consistent action and genuine intention. India has earned this trust by walking the path of dignity, by refusing to impose itself on others, and by offering cooperation without chains. Where others send demands, India sends dialogue. Where others build empires through control, India builds influence through compassion. From Africa to Asia, from Latin America to the islands of the Pacific, nations are turning to India not because she is the richest, but because she listens, she understands, and she stands by them when the world ignores their cries. This kind of influence cannot be bought with money, for money can purchase loyalty only until a higher bidder arrives. But respect, trust, and partnership, these are priceless, and India has mastered the art of giving them freely. The global South, long silenced under the shadow of wealthier nations, now finds in India a voice that echoes their struggles. In matters of trade, climate justice, and equitable growth, India speaks not only for herself, but for all those whose voices have been stifled. This leadership is not the leadership of domination, but of representation. It is not the leadership of imposing one's will, but of carrying the collective will of many. America's empire has often been accused of seeking to command, but India rises by seeking to connect. In a world fractured by divisions, connection becomes more powerful than coercion, and collaboration becomes a greater strength than currency. Even in global crises, India has shown how influence is earned not by flexing power, but by extending help. Whether it was sending vaccines during the pandemic, offering humanitarian aid in times of disaster, or providing technological support to developing nations, India has proven that influence is the child of generosity, not greed. Each gesture of support plants a seed of trust, and over time, these seeds grow into forests of enduring relationships. America may have the capital to invest, but India has the heart to inspire, and inspiration builds alliances that money alone can never secure. Trust and relationships are the currencies of the future. As technology shrinks the world and global challenges demand collective solutions, no nation can thrive in isolation. The days of one empire ruling over all are gone. The nations that will lead are those that bring others together, those that unite instead of divide, those that inspire faith instead of fear. India's path aligns perfectly with this future, for she carries in her spirit the wisdom of unity, the philosophy of harmony, and the belief that progress must be shared to be sustained. This is why India's rise is inevitable. Not because she has the deepest pockets, but because she has the deepest trust. Not because she seeks to dominate, but because she seeks to empower. Not because she demands obedience, but because she earns respect. America's empire may hold influence through wealth, but India's influence flows from relationships that no crisis can shake, no market can diminish, and no empire can overshadow. A true leader walks with humility, yet roars with conviction. India does not need to imitate the path carved by America's empire, for imitation has never created greatness. Instead, she is crafting her own destiny, a journey that is rooted in the wisdom of her civilization, yet propelled by the urgency of modern innovation. India knows that leadership is not about towering above others, but about standing firmly in one's truth, and her truth is one of sustainability, spirituality, and sovereignty. The world watches as India rises not by borrowing another's model, but by shaping her own, a model that balances progress with compassion, ambition with responsibility, and growth with justice. The strength of America's empire is often displayed through its wealth and its global dominance, but that path has left behind scars on nations and strained relationships built on fear. India has chosen a different road. Instead of conquering markets through coercion, she empowers them through fairness. Instead of expanding influence by force, she builds it with trust. This distinct path of humility matched with conviction makes her rise unstoppable, for it does not require her to destroy others to succeed. In this balance of strength and grace lies the power of a nation that refuses to compromise its values for temporary gains. Self-reliance is the cornerstone of India's emerging identity. Through initiatives that strengthen industries, build innovation hubs, and encourage entrepreneurship, India is proving that dependence on others is no longer her story. The phrase Atmanirbhar Bharat is not merely a slogan, but a declaration of intent, an affirmation that a nation of more than 1 billion can stand on its own feet, produce for its own needs, and still share with the world. By nurturing industries that are rooted in indigenous capacity, India sends a clear message. True leadership is not about copying the empire of another, but about rising on the strength of one's own foundations. Equally important is India's focus on policies that uplift those often left behind in the chase for growth. Progress that benefits only the few is fragile, but progress that touches the lives of the poor, the marginalized, and the forgotten is unbreakable. India invests in women, in farmers, in workers, in youth, not because it is easy, but because it is just. It believes that greatness is hollow if it does not uplift the smallest among us. This commitment to inclusive growth is what gives India's story a moral depth that no empire of wealth can rival. A nation that rises by lifting others will always stand taller than a nation that rises by stepping on others. Compassion is not weakness, it is strength. India's model of leadership embraces this truth, for in every policy that considers the environment, in every step toward renewable energy, in every decision that weighs the impact on the earth and its people, India proves that leadership in the modern age must be sustainable. The wealth of tomorrow is not in oil reserves or military might, but in clean air, fertile soil, and renewable power. America's empire may have been built on consumption, but India's destiny is being built on preservation. In this lies a vision that looks beyond the present and dares to embrace the future responsibly. Leadership with humility and conviction does not seek validation from others, for it is self-assured in its purpose. India's rise demonstrates that greatness is not found in replicating another nation's empire, but in writing a story of one's own. By walking softly with compassion, yet speaking boldly with conviction, by building strength without arrogance, and by pursuing growth without greed, India embodies the qualities of a leader the world needs today. The roar of her conviction echoes across the globe, yet it is grounded in the quiet humility of a nation that has suffered, endured, and now chooses to rise on her own terms. The future belongs not to those who hoard wealth, but to those who inspire hope. America's empire may glitter with the shine of its fortune, but fortune fades when it fails to ignite faith in the hearts of people. India's rise is not built upon the illusion of endless consumption, but upon the fire of dignity, the strength of dreams, and the unshakable will of one. 4 billion people. This is a power more enduring than any currency, more precious than any vault of treasure, more formidable than any army. Where money divides, hope unites. Where wealth corrupts, hope purifies. Where empires collapse under their own weight, hope lifts nations higher. India's strength lies in her ability to inspire, not just her own citizens, but the entire world. Everywhere across the land, from crowded cities to quiet villages, there are stories of ordinary men and women daring to dream extraordinary dreams. These dreams may begin small, but when multiplied by millions, they form a tide of transformation that no empire can stop. A farmer who learns new ways to cultivate the soil, a young girl in a rural town who studies by candlelight with her eyes set on becoming a doctor, an entrepreneur who builds a business from nothing but determination. Each of these stories is a spark. Alone, it is light in the darkness. Together, it is a blazing fire that warms a nation and lights the path for others to follow. Hope is the wealth that cannot be stolen. America's empire of dollars may buy influence, but influence without inspiration is fragile. India, on the other hand, is building a currency of faith and belief. When her citizens look to the future, they do not see it as something owned by others. They see it as theirs to shape, theirs to mold, theirs to claim. This mindset, this belief that the impossible is within reach, is more powerful than any fortune. The dreams of 1 billion people are stronger than the dollars of an empire, for dollars run dry, but dreams replenish themselves with every heartbeat. India's rise is also a reminder to the world that hope is contagious. When India stands tall despite its challenges, it sends a message to every developing nation that destiny is not dictated by the wealth of others. It whispers to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America that strength does not come from copying empires, but from believing in one's own story. India's progress tells the forgotten and the overlooked that their voices matter, that their struggles can be transformed into triumphs, and that their futures need not be chained by history. In this way, India becomes not just a nation rising, but a symbol of what is possible for all humanity. Even on the global stage, India carries this power of hope with grace. When she speaks of peace instead of war, sustainability instead of exploitation, cooperation instead of domination, the world listens, not because she commands with wealth, but because she inspires with vision. Leadership rooted in hope is magnetic. It draws allies, it nurtures respect, it transcends boundaries. America may have money to invest, but India has a dream to share, and in the long run, dreams last longer than dollars. The story of India's rise is the story of a people whose hope cannot be extinguished. It is the story of resilience turned into vision, of suffering turned into strength, of limitation turned into liberation. It is a reminder that the greatest resource of a nation is not what lies underground in mines or what lies locked away in banks, but what lies within the hearts of its people. That resource is infinite. That power is unshakable. That hope is unstoppable. And with it, India will not just stand alongside the mightiest empires of the world, but will illuminate a path that others may follow toward a future defined not by wealth, but by faith, courage, and the boundless power of dreams.